Today we continue in our Lenten series of dialogue sermons, a tradition we began some years ago at Westminster. These dialogues are important not only because we learn more about our own faith in Jesus Christ, the one whom we follow as we interact with those of other traditions, also important though because it reminds us that other traditions have value. And there's a rising tide of ideology that would demonize the other, particularly those of other religious creeds or traditions. And by engaging in conversation, we resist that tide of ideology, and we stand against it. If we're going to learn to live together in harmony and peace in this world, we're going to have to learn to understand one another. And thus, these dialogues are an opportunity for us to do that. Today our conversation is about the end of life, and it will be heard from a Christian perspective and more from a Hindu perspective, perhaps, than you hear from me. You hear from me all the time. This morning we're very honored to welcome Dr. Shashikant Sane, who is a prominent physician, now retired here in our community, is a leading member of the Hindu community in the Twin Cities, and very active and responsible in large measure for the construction of the largest Hindu temple in North America in Maple Grove, and we're honored to have you back with us, Dr. Sane. Hinduism is the third largest religion in our land, in America, in the world, and it's the fastest growing religion in our land. Third largest in the world behind Christianity and Islam, and growing much more quickly than, say, Presbyterians are. That was a sign from the Almighty. So we are woefully ignorant of other religions in our land, but particularly this major world religion, Hinduism. So, Dr. Sane, before we get to the conversation about death, could you enlighten us with a quick overview of a few essentials of Hinduism?
Namaste.
Namaste.
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I think it's so important that we have a chance to interact with each other and share each other's ideas and learn from each other. Now I know what I'm saying. Hinduism is the oldest faith tradition in the world. It's written, and the documents are there about 6,900 years. But in the unwritten form, was passed on by parents, fathers and mothers to their children for thousands of years before that. The correct term for Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma. It's a Sanskrit word. And it means eternal lifestyle of living with common sense, universal values of ethics, morality, and most importantly, social responsibility, in order to maintain peace and harmony, happiness and contentment, both for an individual and also for the entire society. It's a very vast and profound religion. It only worships one supreme reality. It's shown in different forms and teaches that all individuals learn about the truth of their identity in due course of time. There is no eternal hell or damnation. It accepts all genuine spiritual paths, right from pure monism, God alone exists, to theistic dualism, where you say, when can I see His grace? Each soul is free to find his own way, whether it by devotion, by austerity, by deep meditations, scriptural service, studies, deep meditations, or combination of any one or all of them. Stress is placed on temple worship, scriptures, and teachers, disciples, guru-disciple traditions, festivals, pilgrimage, chanting of holy hymns, and daily worship that we do at home, other dynamic practices. There are no dogmas, there is no conversion, there are no articles of faith, but simply three basic laws of nature. One is existence. God created, and God is created all of us and the entire creation, and He is both the material and the intelligent cause of creation. So when I bow down and wish you namaste, what I said was I recognize the divinity in each and every one of you, and with that divinity, my divinity worships, bows down. Second thing is, since the entire creation is created by God in its own form, then the entire nature, Mother Nature, flora and fauna, has to be respected exactly in the same fashion. What it means is we are all brothers and sisters. We have no limitations whatsoever. We have unlimited potential. The second law simply is cause and effect. Every action, every thought has a consequence, and we are responsible for its effects. Third is energy remains constant, and it can change its shape or form, like electricity converts into light, sound, heat, but electricity exactly remains the same. Three basic laws.
When Dr. Sane and I have conversations, and this is true of other dialogue partners as well, I'm forever trying to see where Christianity overlaps with, or sometimes doesn't, other world religions. And your opening comment that Hindus recognize one reality, I think you said, we would say the same thing. We're a monotheistic religion as well. And then your first law, of which you describe as the divinity of this one being, is found in every living creature, certainly in every human being. We would agree with that. Imago Dei, we say, is a theological concept that the image of God is in every one of us. Your second point, the cause and effect, reaction, and every action has a reaction. We in our tradition understand that we live always in response to the great initiator, whom we would call God. Worship is a response to God. God acts, we respond, and our life is lived in response. And your comment about ethics and morality and the care for creation is very much part of our tradition. It's the third point, perhaps, where we differ a little bit. And that gets us into the conversation about a perspective on death. Mm-hmm. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that in Christian tradition, often, in fact, generally in our culture, we often avoid talking about death. We fear death, or we think death is somehow shameful. It's a topic that's not made for polite conversation. And I think that gives death a little more hold over us than our tradition would want. Our tradition speaks very clearly that death is a natural part of life. We heard in Ecclesiastes. That's what the author of Ecclesiastes is doing. For everything there is a time and a season, and a matter, every purpose, every matter under heaven has its time. Death has its time. So it's a natural part of life. The Apostle Paul, when he speaks of our outer nature giving way, he's conceding that, yes, there is a point where the inner nature is renewed even at the point of death. But our outer nature gives out. We age, and then we die. So the heart of our tradition would say we have nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear when we face death. In the Hindu tradition, I think you also would say you don't fear death, but you don't fear death for a different reason from a Christian perspective.
You're absolutely right. As a doctor, I know that none of my patients wants to ever die. And as a youngster, you think you are immortal. When you lose somebody in the friend circle, in the family, obviously you come to realize that mortality is inevitable for all of us. As a matter of fact, I can tell you that death is a certainty. I'm not talking to you as a doctor, trust me. But the birth that we born are is purely an accident. To be born with specific genes, specific characteristics, born in a particular family, particular country, particular situation is a pure chance. So that's the unique part of it. And I can go on, if you want, as to the concept of reincarnation. You want me to?
Yes.
Well, we talked about 3 laws of nature. But when we see around the world, there are baffling iniquities that we see. Having practiced with children for 50 years, I'm a radiologist, so I can see through all of you. And I diagnosed at least 200 cancer patients in children every year, and many of them kept on coming back. I've seen teenagers killed by stray bullets and drug overdoses and all those things happening at an early age. Next to children's was Abbott Northwestern Hospital, where youngsters, young people, 30s and 40s, developing massive heart attacks. Bad people getting away with murders, if you will, and good people having painful things. And we, all of us know in this audience that God is living, all giving, all caring, ever compassionate. And we have baffling iniquities. Why does it happen? Why bad things happen to good people? But the reason for that is because we don't take into consideration our past actions, which have created certain results. And what we sometimes see in this particular life is the consequences of those past actions. So in order to...
These are past actions in other lives.
Other lives, or even in your present life. In the sense that, for example, certain actions will give you immediate results. If I put your finger in the fireplace, I know it's going to be burning. But whereas it will take several years to have an apple tree give the apples. As a matter of fact, to have the walnuts, sometimes your parents have to plant it, and you get the walnuts coming out. So certain things come right away, and certain things do not come right away. It takes several time. So in order to have a specific outcome, those actions which have created a certain reaction has to mature. And once those actions have matured, it creates a karmic force. And that becomes a karmic kinetic force which produces the outcome in the form of a birth. So it happens is that particular birth is related to that kinetic force which is matured. So at that time what happens, from my queer on the back, I take a specific arrow and attach the bow and creates the birth that goes on. So it carries with it a certain value system that goes, and that arrow lands exactly the place it's supposed to, because there are certain reactions that I have to take care of. And you find out an appropriate environment conducive to fulfilling those reactions, and you're born in that particular place. And then you try to complete your missions, reach your goals, complete your missions. But the most important mission that we have is basically to identify who we are, our true identity. The question that comes is, who am I? And if we are able to identify who we are as human beings, we're able to find the ultimate answer for which we are born. Because as human beings, we have been given a unique gift by God. I'm glad you asked me a question, what is that unique gift? Simply put, it's a gift of capacity to make choices. If there's a dog who has not eaten for 2 days and there's a food on the table, he's going to jump on that food and not ask for your permission. That's instinctive reaction. Because you've happened to come to my place and you're fasting for 2 days, you're going to be still waiting for me to come and offer you the fruits which are always in my house. That is the capacity to make choices. So as human beings can do certain things or not do certain things. And your responsibility, there are several things that you do as a human being, living a life righteously, finding a love, friends and family, getting security, making certain that you support and serve the other people. But ultimately you want to reach the stage of being liberated. What is liberation? Because if you just look around, all of us are going after something to become something to reach that happiness. And everything that we do in our life is to be something different. And nobody likes to be who they are. Till such time, one comes to realize who that individual really is. Because we know that we are Sat Chit Anand. Basic we are in reality, we are immortal beings. We have the awareness, consciousness, and we are completely at peace, blissful and happy and contented. Only way you are able to recognize it is by studies, guidance, meditations, prayers, and social service by which you are able to sharpen better, become a better human beings. And then through the guidance of an enlightened teacher, can you find that ultimate answer. And then you are able to reach that stage in your life where you can connect with yourself. For example, when I do meditations, it took me several years to really reach the ultimate stage of meditation. What I'm talking about is you go through a process where you take the distractions completely away. Even if I'm sitting next to the highway, noise doesn't bother me. I'm no longer in that. And I'm able to bring my mind totally undisturbed, totally unfazed. I don't see anybody around, but I connect to myself. And I don't know how the time flies. You're connected within. And at that time, you're connected in such a way like you are in deep sleep. You have the complete peace. And when you get up after half an hour, depends on how much time you get in your practice. Nowadays I get more. You are refreshed, you do it. As a matter of fact, only example I can give you is when you go to sleep, you have various phases. I'm not teaching medicine, don't worry about it. But starting about you're awake, then you go through the dream stage, and then you go to a deep part of the sleep. That is the time you forget about everything. You don't remember what happens when you're awake. You don't understand what is in your dream world, which is related to subconscious mind. And you don't know anything. But when I wake up and ask the Reverend, how did you sleep last night? He says, I had a great sleep. If you're fast asleep, how do you know? The reason why he knows, because there was one entity which was constantly aware, watching you in deep sleep. And that's the reason when you have a deep sleep, you feel refreshed. Because it's just like your cell phone, you recharge. The same way you connect to the divinity which is within yourself, and you recharge and refresh. That's exactly what happens in deep meditation. And that happens over and over again. You come to know who you are, and you're always at peace.
When you say over and over again, you mean in each life and another life and another life.
As a matter of fact, not everyone is able to achieve that state of liberation, complete understanding of personality in one life.
So they get another chance.
Exactly. I mean, you got 3 strikes, right? I'm just teasing you in baseball, but I'm talking about you don't get struck out on one pitch, unless in cricket, of course.
This is this is where we're at odds. Your tradition and our tradition, I think of your comment about the kind of restlessness of human life, seeking identity. St. Augustine famously said, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, referring to God. And our teaching is that this life never allows us to fully attain the wholeness in our lives that God would have us by virtue of the image of God in our beings. The Apostle Paul refers to the outer nature, the inner nature. Elsewhere he describes the spiritual body and the physical body. The physical body dies in our tradition and is gone, and it becomes organic material with the rest of the earth. But the spiritual body rises and becomes one with God. Now, Christians understand this in a variety of ways. Maybe the kind of continuum might be from someone who would say, yes, there is eternal love or eternal life beyond death. That's about all I'm willing to say. The other end, perhaps someone would say there is a place called heaven and put their stake in the ground in heaven. I would lean in this direction over here. Not so much heaven as a place, but heaven as the description we have, inadequate as it may be, of an eternal relationship with God that moves on beyond life on this earth where our spiritual body has an eternal relationship with God. As opposed to an attempt to renew that relationship again and again. We would say God's grace is sufficient, God's love is sufficient for us and receives us even in our brokenness.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. The way we look at it is that individual human being has to make honest personal efforts to reach that state of enlightenment. And if you can show me somebody in your friend circle or family circle who is a perfect man, who has not made a mistake, I would like to meet with him or her.
That would be Jesus in our tradition.
And what I'm trying to say is, if that is the case, it's not easy to find, like Gautam Buddha not finding any family where nobody has died.
No.
You got to remember that getting one human life to reach the ultimate state of enlightenment may not be enough. You might require more than one strike. So you're able to get more than one chance. And it doesn't matter how many times you attempt, but as long as you know there is a hope where you can understand your true identity and come to live it. And again, I want you to understand, even if you reach that state of enlightenment, you don't die right away. Because till the time that particular birth, which has resulted in the life, has run out its own clock. So I know several enlightened people. I had a privilege to visit and meet and learn from them over my life. They go through the mortal existence. They suffer through the same kind of disease that everyone else has. But when that clock runs out, then the physical body goes. But till, once they're enlightened, they're at peace, they're comfortable, they're happy. They not that they don't know the pain at a particular part of their body, but they accept it and move on. They're at peace, and they're most refreshed. For example, I had a teacher who gave me the ultimate blessing. He would be suffering from it. I mean, I won't talk about his medical problems. The doctor, I knew them well. But when he sat down to speak and teach and pass on his wisdom, he was absolutely at peace. And amazing, just like a deep sleep. When his lecture was over, he was refreshed, and then was fine.
We're grateful for your wisdom, Dr. Sane, from your tradition. You referred to the word hope, that Hindus live with hope, and that hope is that in this life or perhaps another, we might attain enlightenment. We also live with hope, the hope that is ours in Jesus Christ, who broke the bonds of death and opened the way to life eternal, an eternal relationship with God. And that hope sustains us just as yours sustains you in your tradition. It's so helpful for us to hear an articulation, as you have done today, of where you find hope in your tradition. It helps us understand, in this case, the Hindu tradition, appreciate it, and also, frankly, understand our own tradition and appreciate it more deeply, perhaps. So, we're grateful to you.
Can I say something?
Yes, you may.
I'll take only a minute. What I'm
Okay.
trying to say is, as a physician, I have seen patients on the deathbed. At Children's Hospital, we had about 25 patients in critical list every day that they could die any moment. But at the same time, we have seen patients come back from the door of death and come back. And once they have had a near-death experience, those were totally changed human beings. They had seen the divine light. They had gone through that process. We had reconnected with the divine consciousness that they are. And when they come back, they are totally changed human beings. So that's the connection you have to have. Unless and until you have reached that place, you don't realize it. And then they're not worried about the death.
Thanks be to God for that divine light that sustains us all. Amen. Invite the congregation now into a moment of silence to reflect on what we've heard.